Hey folks, Joe Morris with Answers, Heaven Speaks. Don't scroll by, don't scroll by. I'm sure there's lots of little videos that are fun to watch. But if you've got any kind of a little bit of spirituality within you, stick around, stick around. Yesterday we did a full 2-hour show on the resurrection of Jesus. And it was amazing, just absolutely amazing. And what we learned from the resurrection was that Jesus had taken on a Marisa body. That's the kind of body you're going to have and I'm going to have when we die. And we move on. We move on to the first mansion world on the headquarters planet of Gerizim, which is the headquarters planet of our system of Satania. Now, we spent last week going over all of this, so it made some understanding, allowed us to understand what was going on in the tomb when Jesus was laid in the tomb. So just let me back up for a second. First of all, Michael created our universe. Think of it's a little bit bigger than the Milky Way, but just think of the Milky Way. Just think of the Milky Way as belonging to Michael. And he created it. He created everything within it, created all the hard stuff, all the planets, all this other stuff, with the help of the Father. And but then he created all the beings. So he created the entire administration, all the way from archangels down through seraphic angels and cherubim angels, but all kinds of different most highs, gods of various planets and various headquarters. And Jesus had to, over the course of about 1 billion years, his first incarnation was as a Melchizedek. And the Melchizedeks are created by the Father, all the way up there, the Father, plus I believe it's the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit. They create the Melchizedeks. So they're the first order of beings created by the Father up above. And then Jesus, in conjunction with with his Holy Spirit, there's a Holy Spirit within our local universe as well. They created all the beings that are in that basically are the administration that run the entire universe. The universe is made up of 100 systems. First, there's 100 systems, and each system has 1,000 planets. And our Earth is in a system called Satania. But there are 100 systems within each constellation. And our constellation is called Norlashadek. But then there are 100 constellations that make up the local universe. So we have to live 570 lives after this one. That's not counting if we have to come back and be reincarnated, so to speak, with our personality and consciousness. That's one thing we never lose. Jesus didn't lose it. We don't lose it. We always retain our consciousness and our personality, except if we get to the judgment halls. It's called the judgment halls in Gerizim. Of the rehabilitation and the judgment halls on Gerizim, we go in for judgment. And that's when all the records, the Akashic records or whatever you may call them, that have been recorded within your brain, I do that because it's actually recorded within the thought adjuster, which is the spirit of the Father that lives within you. And if you haven't really done what you were supposed to do when you came to Earth, two things can happen. One, you're eliminated. Done. No more. No longer do you exist. Nothing. Nada, 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 nada. And your soul moves on, and then the soul will still continue to move on. But your personality, your consciousness, done. Just done. And the soul can decide not to reincarnate, not come back, and then you're done. You're just done. Or number two, you can come back. You can come back to try to learn the lessons that you were supposed to learn when you came down here in the first place. Not everybody learns the lessons that they came for. So many of us, and I've had to go back, I've lived according to those in the know. I have had at least 3 lives. May have had even more than that. I've been around in the time of Jesus. I was around in the time of Caesar. I was around as a blacksmith. In the 1800s, I was around during the Constitutional Convention in the United States. All different men, but had my personality. And my consciousness retains all of that, except when you come back as a reincarnated self to have to really relive your life on earth again to learn those lessons, you come with amnesia. You don't remember anything. But when you die and go off to that first mansion world and take on a new body, it's a bloodless body and it doesn't require food, but it's still a body. And we recognize each other up there as beings that are created from the elements of that planet that we go to. And those planets have twice the elements that Earth has. But they use those elements to create our bodies. And when Jesus came back, he didn't eat and he had no blood. So I don't think we have blood up there in our next life. But when we do go to that life, we will retain everything we've learned from all of our previous lives. And then we have another 570 lives we have to live, and that's a long time before we can start moving on, and leading our lives towards spirituality, becoming spirit. Because we do not pick up spirit when we die. We don't end up at the Father's right hand when we die. We're judged. And if we kind of screwed up this life, we got to come back. If we didn't screw up our life, we get to progress on. We start on those new lives. Now, when Jesus died, when he died on the cross, he was put into the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, who was a follower of Jesus and formerly a member of the Sanhedrin, along with Nicodemus. Nicodemus, if you remember way back in the story, Nicodemus was going to become one of the apostles as well, but he just couldn't give up his wealth. He couldn't give up his high standing in the Jewish nation. And so, if you remember, he kind of hid behind a corner and just kind of watched the apostles as they headed on up to Galilee out of Jerusalem to start the training for the missionary work that Jesus was going to do. But Nicodemus was a follower and a believer in Jesus. And so, lost my train of thought. Anyway, Jesus has been resurrected, and he came up out of the tomb, and he was above the tomb, but nobody could see him. He was invisible. He could make himself visible and invisible, visible and invisible. And we'll learn that today as we go on, because he made appearances before a whole lot of people. Now, the tomb continued to hold the body of Jesus, and the big rock, a big millstone, was still covering up the entrance to the tomb. And there were 20 guards out there, 10 Jewish guards and then 10 Roman soldiers, because they just didn't want anybody stealing that body. The Jews didn't want anybody stealing that body, and they got approval from Pilate to go ahead and send out 10 additional troops. So they had 20 troops on various times of duty, so nobody was asleep. When all of a sudden 7 unnamed personalities came all the way down from the Father, all the way up there in the Isle of Paradise, which is in Havona, which is the center of all the 7 super universes. Each super universe is made up of hundreds of thousands of local universes, each of them headed up by a Michael. You would take 100 local universes and put them together, and I can't remember the name of that. I think it's called a Majorus or something. And the head of our universe of universes is led by Emmanuel, and that's a brother of Michael, and of course Michael became Jesus. So Jesus, while he was in the tomb, in his Marancha body, he was having conversations with Gabriel and some seraphic hosts, some seraphim that were there. And the seraphim went to go let Emmanuel know that Jesus had gone ahead and graduated to a Morancha body. Now he could walk through walls, he could go through that tomb, and he was up on the tomb, and he was up there with Gabriel, and Gabriel's sticking around. Gabriel's the number 2 guy in our entire local universe. He was the first created with the Father Melchizedek. The Father Melchizedek combined with Michael, and they created the local Melchizedek order. I forget the name of the Melchizedek, that Machiaventa Melchizedek is the one that actually met with Abraham way back there in the book of Genesis when Abraham's name was Abram, and it was changed to Abraham, and he was then going to become the father of the Jews, and Abraham was the one that was going to kill his son Isaac, but God stopped him, and so in God's eyes he was willing to sacrifice his own son, and but he didn't kill him. But anyway, the Jews became the favored, became the people, God's people. And so, anyway, so Jesus is in the tomb. He's in the tomb. And 7 unnamed personalities from all the way up on high came down to meet with the midwayers who we have been learning all this from. This has been all channeled stuff through Edgar Casey with midwayers. Midwayers are personalities, electrified personalities, not with human bodies, with unusual types of bodies, and they're basically electrical, and they have their own world that they live on. But they've been in charge. They've been in charge of keeping track of Jesus' whole story. So these 7 unnamed personalities from way up on high, above the most highs, and there are most highs in each constellation, and there are most highs in each system. Unfortunately, the most high of our system, of Satania, was Lucifer. And Lucifer fell, and he screwed everything up. He just screwed everything up. Because Earth originally was supposed to be a light and life, planet of light and life, 4th dimensional, 5th dimensional planet. And Lucifer screwed everything up. He brought evil, sin, into the world. And he did it by converting Adam and Eve, who were called minister sons, sons and daughters, ministerial sons and daughters, to uplift the world. Evolution had brought mankind right up close to be heavenly. Think of Neanderthals, think of what's the progression of the various man through evolution. They got that far, and now they're going to be uplifted by the arrival of Adam and Eve. But Lucifer screwed up. He introduced sin and evil to Adam and Eve, and then they fell, and the whole world's been a mess. And that's why Jesus chose, when he was Michael, to come down to earth, because we were kind of like the focal point of the fallen system of Satania, headed up by Lucifer. His call it spirit of Lucifer was Satan, and then there was a planetary prince before he fell. Planetary prince, his name was Caligastia, and Caligastia was uprooted when Jesus came in, and Jesus was a man. He took over as the planetary prince, but the Caligastia is better known as the devil. And nobody has been disintegrated or anything like that. They're still there. Everything is still being judged. Now Jesus is inside the tomb. His body is still inside there. His Morancha body is the same body you're going to have. You're going to have a Morancha body when you die, and you go on to the other side, if you don't come back and have to be reincarnated and do it all over again on earth, usually about 70 years later. So Jesus is in his Morancha body. He's above the tomb, but his physical, mortal, human body is still inside the tomb. these 7 unnamed personalities that came down all the way from the Father in the Isle of Paradise came down to disintegrate the body. Nobody really knew how they were going to do it, but what they did was they sped up time. They sped up time so that the fleshy part of Jesus just vanished. And then the midwayers and these unnamed personalities rolled open the stone. Only thing was they weren't seen. And all these guards, these Roman guards and these Jewish guards, just saw the stone being rolled all by itself. Nobody was there. They didn't see him. They didn't see these unnamed personalities or the midwayers because they're unseen. They're fourth dimensional, but somehow they can feel and touch and do things here in the third dimension. You'll see that Jesus does the same thing. He doesn't eat, he doesn't have any blood, but he can touch things. He'd rather people not try to touch him because his body is on the earth, coming down from the Morancha world, is kind of unrecognizable, but you'll see that everybody recognizes him by his voice and his personality, because you never lose your personality. You're stuck with your personality. You can learn to grow in your personality as you move up and up and up and up through eternity. So they came and they dissolved the fleshy part, all the fleshy parts of Jesus' body. They sped up time. They just didn't want him to rot in that grave. Plus, they had to get him out of there because he needed to be resurrected. So all the guards split. They all ran away, and they were scared, and they ran to their head guards, the commanders and everything, and told them what happened, and apologized for leaving their posts in watching the tomb. But they said it opened up. But none of them had gone in to go look and see if Jesus was there. Now, Jesus had been wrapped in linen cloths, including a wrap around his head. And eventually, now they had taken these midwayers and these so-called personalities that came down from up above, sped up time, got rid of the entire human body of Jesus, but what ends up is the bones. And they had to get the bones out so that it would become dust. Dust to dust. They couldn't leave the dust inside the tomb. They took it out of the tomb, and it became part of the world again. Jesus' body went from bones to dust. If we open up grave sites, we don't find any fleshy parts of whoever got buried. You find bones. That's it. Bones. That's all that's left. And eventually, over maybe 1 million years or hundreds of thousands of years, those bones too will disintegrate and become dust. And that's what these personalities did. They got rid of his body. So now, Mary Magdalene, was on her way out to the tomb because they didn't think he was wrapped properly. They were bringing myrrh and other fragrances and oils to wrap Jesus' body again. They were hoping, of course, that the guards would open up the cave and allow them to go in and rewrap Jesus. When all these guards went running by Mary and she couldn't understand what was going on, they were just running for their lives. And Mary, in the meantime, she couldn't figure it out, so she ran to the grave, to the tomb, to see what was going on, and she saw the rock was open. And while she was in there, realizing that Jesus' body was gone, but the cloths were still laying on the kind of the table that Jesus had been laid on, and the head scarf, the head cloth, and the linens were laid still in perfect condition. So if somebody would have taken them, the cloths would have been all thrown on the floor or crumpled up or whatever, but they weren't. They were still just as if they just sunk down and laid on there. Now, before we get into Mary seeing Jesus, and that's what we're going to do, we're going to get into his appearances. Not quite. We'll probably tomorrow we'll get into when he actually gets together with the apostles, because Mary runs back, tells John. John runs back to the grave and sees that Jesus is not there. He believes he's been resurrected, and Mary does as well. And so they run off, and they tell the apostles, and then they also run off to Lazarus's home in Bethany, where Mary and Martha were, and also Jesus' family had come down from Capernaum and Nazareth to be there during the crucifixion. And I know I'm kind of going through this fast, and sometimes you have to listen to it twice to really pick up on what's going on. But the apostles didn't believe. They didn't even believe. In fact, Thomas, doubting Thomas, didn't even want to sit around with the apostles anymore. He was so upset about the crucifixion, and he really did not believe Jesus was going to resurrect. And Thomas just went off on his own. So there were only 10 remaining apostles that were over at John Mark's house, where they had had the Last Supper. And they were all stewing, and they were all upset and discouraged and totally bummed out. And they didn't believe Mary. John kind of did. He ran, and then he came back and he told them, yeah, he's gone. He's not there. But they thought that the Jews had stolen his body. Now, that wouldn't make any sense, to steal the body. That would be reaffirming the fact that he had arisen. So that would be stupid. And the Jews, the head Jews, the chief priests, and the Sanhedrin paid all the guards money to say that somebody came and stole the body. And they would back them up if they were going to get in trouble with Pilate. The chief Jews would come in and vouch for the Roman soldiers that, yes, somebody had come and stolen the body. And to this day, the Jews still think that, right to today. But that's not what happened. And when the word got out that Jesus had arisen from the grave, the chief priest, Caiaphas, he and the Sanhedrin declared that if anybody speaks of the arisen Jesus in the temple, they would be put to death. Death for even talking about it. Now, the Sanhedrin were so mixed up, and they were all in a tizzy about the whole thing. They didn't even come together as a body to vote on that. But it was on the table. They wanted to kill anybody who declared that Jesus was arisen. But before we get into those visits, there are dispensation periods in the history of our world. And there was the first dispensation, which means people who died who did not have the Spirit of God within them. They did not have a thought adjuster, but were basically good people. They went to their death, and they stayed in the ground, and they did not arise into the Morancha worlds. They were called sleeping survivors. And when Prince Caligastia, before he fell, came down to earth, was the first dispensation period. And they were all raised, and they went up to the Morancha worlds, up to the first mansion worlds. There's 7 mansion worlds up there in Mansonia, which has the resurrection halls. And this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Hopefully you got to listen to some of my shows last week when I was trying to describe all this. So very summarily going over it. But when you die, you will go to the first mansion world. Yes, mansion worlds are discussed in the Old Testament. And yes, they're discussed by Paul in the New Testament. Paul talks about the third heaven, which is actually the third mansion world. So we all go to the first mansion world if we're really extremely good people, like a good pope or maybe a Billy Graham or something like that. Yeah, you get to jump over the first one and maybe go to the second or the third. But even so, even though you've brought yourself up very high in the eyes of God, you still got to go back to the second and the first worlds, but you go as teachers and not as pupils. We become pupils. We go to school. We get to play. We get to have a lot of recreation. Yes, we get to eat up there, but your Morancha body cannot eat human third-dimensional food. But up there, whether it's the fourth dimension or fifth dimension, we don't know, but it's still on physical planets. Planet Earth is number 606 out of 619 planets in our system. And our system, trying to remember what the name of our system is. I know Jerison. Oh, Satania. Satania. Our system is called Satania. And there's 100 systems that make up a constellation. Then 100 constellations make up a local universe. Milky Way has 88 constellations. And so we're picking up some other small constellation or small galaxy somewhere else to make up 100 constellations for Jesus's, Michael's world. But up there, we're all going to go to those mansion worlds, and that's how we're going to progress. And we're going to have 570 lives. Now, Jesus, the first dispensation was when Prince Galligastia came to the world. The second dispensation was when Adam and Eve came into the world as ministerial son and daughter. And now they have the third dispensation. As Jesus has been resurrected, he and Gabriel announced the rising of all the sleeping survivors from the time of Adam up to that point. And we will probably have another dispensation period probably soon. Don't know. There's a couple thousand years, I think, between each dispensation, and the last one was 2,000 years ago. So we could be close to having a dispensation. Although, when the Spirit of Truth came in, and we're going to get into that, we're going to find out more about exactly what that Spirit of Truth is. The Spirit of Truth has been given to us by Christ, by Michael, by Jesus. And we're going to have a chapter on that coming up real soon. And I think when the Spirit of Truth came in, that's when we all received the Father's Spirit, the Spirit of the Father, the thought adjuster. So from the time of Jesus, I think everybody immediately goes up. They don't just become sleeping survivors anymore for a dispensation. Everybody transitions up. You don't disappear and become nothingness anymore unless the soul decides to do that by not coming back to reincarnate again. But not everybody reincarnates. Not everybody. In fact, most people move on. They're really rotten people who never really accepted God in this life. Atheists probably have to come back. And but that's all to be learned. That's all to be learned at the next level. So anyway, they're doing the third dispensation. So let's go through that dispensation first. A little after 4:30 on this Sunday, he is crucified on a Friday. He died at basically sometime between noon and 3:00. And they took him down off the cross at 3:00 on a Friday. Then there was a Sabbath day when there was a Passover and nothing was going on. And then there was a Sunday. So there's 3 days, not 72 hours, 3 days when Jesus resurrects. But now they're at 4:00 on Sunday, April 9th of AD 30. Gabriel summoned the archangels to his side and made ready to inaugurate the general resurrection of the termination of the Adamic dispensation on earth. When the vast host of the seraphim and the cherubim concerned in this great event had been marshaled in proper formation, the Morantia Michael, that's the new body of Jesus, the Morantia Michael, appeared before Gabriel, saying, "As my Father has life in himself, so has the given it to the Son to have life in himself." Basically giving life. As my Father has life in himself, so has he given it to the Son to have life in himself. Those risen become sons of God. You and I are sons and daughters of God. Although have not yet fully resumed the exercise of universe jurisdiction. That's his whole thing. That's what this whole trip was about, for him to take over full sovereignty of his universe. And his last incarnation was as a human. But he does still have to go through the Morantia body. And if you remember from yesterday, he met up with a lot of Morantia people. And they actually erected a statue to Michael. He who was the risen, the Creator was arisen into the Morancha worlds. And everybody's like, wow, he came to visit us. So he had to experience that. That's part of our life. That's part of Jesus' life. He too had to experience the Morancha life. Now he kind of went through it rather quickly. He didn't have to live 570 lives because he had already lived a bunch of the other ones. But anyway, that's for another story. So he says, this self-imposed limitation does not in any manner restrict the bestowal of life upon my sleeping sons. Let the roll call of the planetary resurrection begin. The circuit of the archangels then operated for the first time from Earth. Gabriel and the archangel hosts moved to the place of the spiritual polarity of our planet, wherever that is. Not sure where that is. The archangel hosts moved to the place of the spiritual polarity of our planet. And when Gabriel gave the signal, there flashed to the first of the system mansion worlds the voice of Gabriel saying, by the mandate of Michael, let the dead of Urantia, Earth, dispensation, rise. Then all the survivors of the human races of Earth, who had fallen asleep since the days of Adam, and who had not already gone on to judgment, appeared in the resurrection halls of Mansonia, in readiness for Morancha investiture. Remember Elijah and Enoch, both of them were just taken up. They were just taken up. They didn't die. They just disappeared. They were taken up. So those are people who were already judged. And maybe there were many more. Who knows? Maybe David. David was probably taken up. Didn't have to go into a grave. Maybe Solomon as well. But they don't say. They don't say who those few who had not already gone on to judgment appeared in the resurrected halls of Mansonia in readiness for Morancha investiture. I just saw a blink in my electricity, so I might have a little problem coming up very shortly. I hope it doesn't knock this thing off, otherwise I'm going to have to do this tomorrow and not have a show today. I'm also going to let my show from yesterday run, not end today, but it will actually end tomorrow, because I want to get as many people to see this as possible. And if I run something for a couple days, my reach can exceed 100,000. It can go all the way up to like 150,000 people around the world. And then my through plays really shoot up. They go up near 2,000, then they jump up around 3,000. One day we had 5,000 people that watched our show. So it's a small number compared to the total reach. And then we have a lot of views. We get a lot of views, 10,000, 12,000, 7,500, 15,000 views, whatever. Those are people that watch it for a few seconds and then go, no, I want to watch this next video. If somebody blowing themselves up on TikTok or something, or cat videos, I like to say. So I'm going to watch to see if we get knocked off, but hang tight. If I do get knocked off, hang tight, because it will come back. It will come back. And for those of you who watch this later, are watching this later, you will only see a little blink. But I will not keep reading and miss something. I'll hesitate and wait until we come back. So hopefully that isn't going to happen. And in an instant of time, the seraphim and their associates made ready to depart for the mansion worlds. Ordinarily, these seraphic guardians, one time assigned to the group custody of these surviving mortals, I always say we have a team. We have a team, right? I'm always saying you have angels assigned to you. Seraphic angels. And then the seraphim have their gophers, their errand angels are the cherubim. They're the smaller ones. The seraphim are the big ones. The archangels are the really big ones. But we're all assigned angels. Your team has angels. You have the Spirit of the Father. You have your soul. If you want it, you got the Spirit of truth and the Spirit of Christ within you. You have the Holy Spirit by asking the Holy Spirit to come within you. And then you have soul family members that are watching you on earth in this life. And you have seraphic guardians, angels that are watching you. So these people who lived before they got the thought adjuster, the Spirit of the Father, still had seraphim, seraphic hosts that were trying to keep them on a good path, on a good path. So ordinarily, these seraphic guardians, one time assigned to the group custody of these surviving mortals, would have been present at the moment of their awakening in the resurrection halls of Mansonia. That's where you're going to go. You're going to go to the resurrection hall of Mansonia on the first mansion world. It says, but they were on this world itself. They were on earth because Jesus had just been crucified. So all these seraphic hosts were on our world at the time. I mean, there's so many universe personalities watching, just watching the life of Jesus, Michael, on this world. And then there were tons and tons of them there during the crucifixion as well. And as Jesus said, he could have, just with a snap of his fingers, he would have had 12 legions of angels to come in and protect him. But it was his choice, it was his will to do the Father's will, to die a mortal death on earth. But anyway, they were on this world, the seraphic hosts, at this time because of the necessity of Gabriel's presence here in connection with the Morantia resurrection of Jesus. Jesus has a new body. He has a Morantia resurrection. You, when you die, you will have a Morantia resurrection. You'll have a body you'll recognize by personality and voice. Your grandma and your grandpa and maybe your mom and dad if they've preceded you in death. And other family members that you had when you were living a life back during the time of Caesar, or living in Africa or something as a in a jungle tribe or something, whatever. You are going to go to the mansion world, and you will go to a resurrection hall, and for 3 days you will be judged. You'll be judged over those 3 days. You're not going to go to hell. You may go to purgatory for a while. You can keep yourself going to the mansion world by getting stuck in purgatory if you take your life. That is the absolute no. Never take your life. If you even consider it, stop considering it. It's a no. It's an absolute no. And you're going to get stuck in purgatory between the light and the darkness on the earth. And you're stuck. When you're there, you're going to have that constant, the same thing that caused you to go bang, you will relive every day. So don't do it. Just don't do it. Believe me. Don't do it. It's not a good thing to do because then it's hard to get out of there. It's hard to get out of purgatory and get up into the light. People like Marisa can meet them. Marisa has. Marisa has saved a lot of people. People who have committed suicide, and Marisa has seen them in sessions and told them, there's the light right over there. Go through the light. Go to the light. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And most of the time they go, we're afraid. We don't want to. So in purgatory, you still have fear. When you get resurrected in the resurrection halls on the first mansion world, when you die, your fear is gone. Yes, you will still have your consciousness, your memories and everything, but you won't have fear. That will be gone. Anger, gone. But you still will deal with maybe some traits that might be somewhat similar there because you got 570 lives you live. You have to actually go through death again. And some of those mansion worlds you live for 25 years of earth time. But in some cases you live 500 years of earth time. So it just depends on which mansion world you're on and what level within each mansion world you're on. Marisa has an analogous thing in her studies and some of her writings where he talks about the 12-story building. For those of you who are clients of Marisa, you've probably heard her talk about the 12-story building. And I believe that that's what comes in basically when you think of leaving this earth and going to the Morancha life, and then there's another life after that, and another one after that, another, and each level of 12 is your 12-story building. How that relates to the 7-dimension worlds, I'm not sure. Maybe Marisa can come on today and give us a clue. Anyway, notwithstanding the countless individuals having personal seraphic guardians and those achieving the requisite attainment of spiritual personality progress had gone on to the Mansonia during the ages subsequent to the times of Adam and Eve. And though there had been many special and millennial resurrections, I guess there were some extra dispensation. They weren't called dispensations. They were kind of called group resurrections. Not sure when, not sure who, but apparently there were millennial and special resurrections of earthly sons. This was the third of the planetary roll calls, or complete dispensational resurrections. The first occurred at the time of the arrival of the planetary prince, Caligastia, the second during the time of Adam and Eve, and this, the third, signalized the Morancha resurrection, the mortal transit of Jesus of Nazareth. You and I will each have mortal transit. We go on. This is what happens when we die. We go on. We move on. We do interdimensionally, I guess. I don't know. We certainly don't do it in our mortal human form. This is going to go back to dust. This body just goes back to dust, just as Jesus' body had to go back to dust from the tomb. When the signal of the planetary resurrection had been received by the chief of archangels, the personalized adjuster of the Son of Man relinquished his authority over the celestial hosts. Again, Jesus' spirit within him, his personal thought adjuster, was directly from the Father, and it can leave the body, and it becomes your companion when you move on. When you go on to the first mansion world, that spirit that has been living within your body here on earth will exit and be standing right there next to you and be your companion. And this is what's happened here. The personalized adjuster of the Son of Man, Jesus, Son of Man, relinquished his authority over the celestial hosts assembled on earth, Urantia, turning all these dispensational raised sons of the local universe back to the jurisdiction of their respective commanders. The seraphic hosts, I have a seraphic host. You have a seraphic host. We each have angels that are assigned to us. And those angels are part of a whole seraphic organization, and there are commanders within that seraphic organization. And so these dispensational sons, the sleeping survivors who are raised, they are spread back out to their original groups, commanders. And when he had done this, he departed for Salvington. That would be the thought adjuster of Jesus, left and went to Salvington. Salvington is the headquarters world with tons of inhabited planets around it of, let's call it what it is, the Milky Way, our local universe. There is a headquarters planet called Salvington, and that is so big that it has, I think it takes 1,000 years for it to become a day. One day is 1,000 Earth years. And outside of Salvington, there are all kinds of system planets where people within those systems, we're in one system, there's 100 of them, there's 100 systems, but those mortals in those other systems on other inhabited planets, and we went over all of that, the makeup of our universe. There are about a billion inhabited planets just in our local universe, just in the Milky Way. Inhabited planets with mortals, human beings, human-like beings, not necessarily exactly looking like us, but very similar to us. Biped, 2 legs. Typically 2 legs, 2 arms. Sometimes they have more than 2 arms, and I think that's where you kind of get into Hindu religions and how some of the gods had 4 arms, 6 arms, 8 arms, what have you, because Morancha angels or whatever had visited during the time of Krishna and Brahma and Shiva. That would be the trinity of the Islam faith. Not the Islam, but the Hindu faith. Brahma being God, Krishna being the Son, Shiva being the Holy Spirit. And they actually had the trinity before the Jews and before the Christians did. So anyway, Jesus' thought adjuster leaves. He's a very high up guy. Very, 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 very high up. I may have a lower level spirit, maybe a younger spirit. And you may have an older spirit. Don't know. And that might have something to do with our progression in the Morancha's worlds. But anyway, he departed. He went up to Salvington to register with Emmanuel. Now, Emmanuel is in charge of 100 universes. But he's still the brother of Michael. He's the brother of Michael, but he heads up 100 universes. Jesus, Michael heads up 100 constellations. So there's 100 times 100. That's 4. That's what is that? That's 10,000. 10,000. Is that right? 10,000 constellations. Emmanuel's in charge of what? 10,000? I think that's right. 10,000 constellations. So that's why you hear in the Bible Emmanuel, and even in the New Testament, some people call Jesus Emmanuel, and Jesus says, "Don't call me Emmanuel, because Emmanuel's my brother." And they don't. Who's brother? I thought he had a brother named James, and a brother named Jude, and a brother named Joseph, and a brother named Amos. He didn't. They don't remember him having a brother by the name of Emmanuel. But Jesus always said, "This is not my world. This is not my world." And he'll get back into that too when he walks along with a couple strangers. So let's get through this dispensation. And he was immediately followed by all the celestial hosts, not required for any more duty on earth. But Gabriel, number 2 in charge, he remained behind on earth with the Morancha body, the Morancha Jesus. And this is the recital of the events of the resurrection of Jesus as viewed by those who saw them as they really occurred, free from the limitations of partial and restricted human vision. Here's the discovery of the empty tomb. How are we doing on time? Gads, we're not going to get very far here today. Anyway, okay, let's get back to the empty tomb. As we approach the time of the resurrection of Jesus on this early Sunday morning, it should be recalled that the 10 apostles were sojourning at the home of Elijah and Mary Mark. And remember, that's the parents of John Mark. John Mark was Jesus' errand boy. So where they were asleep in the upper chamber, resting on the very couches whereon they reclined during the Last Supper with their master. This Sunday morning, they were all there assembled except Thomas. Thomas was with them for a few minutes late Saturday night when they first got together, but the sight of the apostles, coupled with the thought of what had happened to Jesus, was just too much for Thomas. He looked at his associates over and immediately left the room, going to the home of Simon in Bethpage. Some lessons back, Jesus had tarried for a while in the home of Simon, and while the rest of the apostles had gone to Bethany, Bethpage and Bethany are close together, and Bethany is where Lazarus was from, and his sisters Mary and Martha, and all the apostles would stay over there, but Jesus would stay at Simon's house. He had kind of taken over the area, the county, so to speak, that Lazarus's father used to command at one time. And there's governments. There were governments then, and laws, lots of laws. But anyway, so Thomas splits, and he goes on over to Simon's house in Bethpage, where he thought to grieve over his troubles in solitude. The apostles all suffered, not so much, just saw electricity blink again. The apostles all suffered, not so much from doubt and despair, as from fear and grief and shame. Those are the things that Jesus had taught him to get rid of. Get rid of the fear and doubts and grief. At the home of Nicodemus, there were gathered together with David Zebedee. David Zebedee was head of the messenger corps, and he was the brother of John and James Zebedee, the apostles. Together with David Zebedee and Joseph of Arimathea, some 12 or 15 of the more prominent of the Jerusalem disciples of Jesus. Yes, there were a lot of disciples that followed him around. Remember, there were 70 of them. 70. And they had split up and gone off to different parts of Palestine to teach. At the home of Joseph of Arimathea, there were... Joseph of Arimathea is the one that gave up his tomb for Jesus. I got the hiccups. At the home of Joseph of Arimathea, there were some 15 or 20 of the leading women believers. Only these women abode in Joseph's house, and they had kept close within during the hours of the Sabbath day and the evening after the Sabbath, so that they were ignorant of the military guard on watch at the tomb. Neither did they know that a second stone had been rolled in front of the tomb, and that both of these stones had been placed under the seal. There was a seal put on them by Pilate, a seal of Pilate. A little before 3 o'clock this Sunday morning, when the first signs of day began to appear in the east, 5 of the women started out for the tomb of Jesus. They had prepared an abundance of special embalming lotions, and they carried many linen bandages with them. It was their purpose more thoroughly to give the body of Jesus its death anointing, and more carefully to wrap it with the new bandages. So they didn't know that the rock had been rolled in front of the tomb. So they were just going to the grave to go ahead and give a new burial clothes. The women who went on this mission of anointing Jesus' body were Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of the Alphaeus twins. Remember, the Alphaeus twins were apostles. Salome, the mother of all the Zebedee brothers, David, James, and John. Joanna, the wife of Chuza. She had come up in the story before. Chuza, I believe, was a chief priest in one of the counties in Palestine, and Joanna, the wife, had become a follower of Jesus, even though her husband was a chief priest, Jew. And then also Susanna, the daughter of Ezra of Alexandria. So those women were heading over to the tomb. It was about 3 o'clock when the 5 women, laden with their ointments, arrived before the empty tomb. As they passed out of the Damascus gate, they encountered a number of the soldiers fleeing into the city, more or less panic-stricken. And this caused them to pause for a few minutes, but when nothing more developed, they resumed their journey to the tomb. They were greatly surprised to see the stone rolled away from the entrance to the tomb, inasmuch as they had said among themselves on the way out, "Who's going to help us roll away the stone?" So, okay, fixed what I just said. They did know that there was a stone. And say, who's going to help us roll away the stone so they could put the new burial clothes on Jesus? They set down their burdens and began to look upon one another in fear and with great amazement. While they stood there a tremble with fear, Mary Magdalene actually ventured around the smaller stone and dared to enter the sepulchre, the tomb. This tomb of Joseph was in his garden on the hillside of the eastern side of the road, and it also faced towards the east. So by this hour there was just enough of the dawn of a new day to enable Mary to look back to the place where the Master's body had laid, and to discern that it was actually gone. And in the recess of stone where they had laid Jesus, Mary saw only the folded napkin where his head had rested, and the bandages wherewith he had been wrapped laying totally intact, and as they had rested on the stone before the celestial hosts removed the body. The covering sheet lay at the foot of the burial niche. The covering sheet lay at the foot of the burial niche. After Mary had tarried in the doorway of the tomb for a few moments, and she didn't see distinctly when she first entered the tomb. Her eyes couldn't adjust. She had a hard time seeing. At that moment, she saw that Jesus' body was gone, and in its place only these grave clothes. And she uttered a cry of alarm and anguish. All the women were exceedingly nervous, and they had been on edge ever since meeting the panicking soldiers at the city gate. And when Mary uttered this scream of anguish, they were terror-stricken. And they fled. They fled. They didn't go into the tomb. They fled in great haste. And they didn't stop until they had run all the way to the Damascus gate. By this time, Joanna was conscience-stricken that they had deserted Mary. She rallied her companions, and they started back for the tomb. As they drew near the sepulchre, the tomb, the frightened Mary Magdalene, who was even more terrorized when she failed to find her sisters waiting when she came out of the tomb, now rushed up to them, excitedly exclaiming, "He's not there! He's not there! They have taken him away!" And she led them back to the tomb, and they all entered and saw that it was empty. All 5 of the women then sat down on the stone near the entrance and talked over the situation. It had not yet occurred to them that Jesus had been resurrected. They had been by themselves over the Sabbath, and they conjectured that the body had been moved to another resting place. But when they pondered such a solution of their dilemma, they were at a loss to account for the orderly arrangement of the grave clothes. How could the body have been removed, since the very bandages in which it was wrapped were left in position and apparently totally intact on the burial shelf? As these women sat there in their early hours of the dawn of this new day, they looked to one side and observed a silent and motionless stranger. Say this again. As these women sat there in the early hours of the dawn of this new day, they looked to one side and observed a silent and motionless stranger. For a moment they were again frightened, but Mary Magdalene, rushing toward him, women weren't supposed to approach men in those days, but Mary did, rushing toward him and addressing him as if she thought he might be the caretaker of Joseph of Arimathea's garden. She said, "Where have you taken the body? Where have you taken the master? Where have they laid him? Tell us that we may go and get him." When the stranger did not answer Mary, she began to cry. Then spoke Jesus to them, saying, "Whom do you seek?" And Mary said, "We seek for Jesus, who was laid to rest in Joseph's tomb, but he is gone. Do you know where they have taken him?" Then said Jesus, "Did not this Jesus tell you, even in Galilee, that he would die, but that he would rise again?" These words startled the women, but the master was so changed that they did not yet recognize him, and with his back turned to the dim light. So they're kind of seeing him in a silhouette, but they don't recognize the body. They don't recognize Jesus' new Marisa body. And as they pondered his words, he addressed the Magdalene, Mary, with a familiar voice, saying, "Mary." And when she heard that word of well-known sympathy and affectionate greeting, she knew it was the voice of the Master. And she rushed back to kneel at his feet while she exclaimed, "My Lord, my Master." And all of the other women recognized that it was the Master who stood before them in glorified form. And they quickly knelt before him. These human eyes were enabled to see the Marisa form of Jesus because of the special ministry of the transformers, along with the midwayers, in association with certain of the Marisa personalities then accompanying Jesus. So some of the Morancha people, from my lesson yesterday, if you did listen to it, and I recommend that if you didn't watch or listen to the resurrection, go back and listen to it. It's a great story. But when Jesus had gone up to the Morancha worlds, he was glorified. He was glorified by all the Morancha souls that were up there, because they knew who he was. They knew he was their creator, who was now going through the lives that they were going through. Some of them were given the ability to also come back to earth with Jesus. But typically they're invisible, but they can allow themselves to be visible only because of reasons we don't understand. But there are people up there that do understand, but they don't tell us exactly how they did it. As Mary sought to embrace his feet, Jesus said, "Don't touch me." And Mary, he says, "Touch me not, Mary, for I am not as you know me in the flesh. In this form will I tarry with you for a season before I ascend to the Father. But go, all of you, now, and tell my apostles, but also Peter, that I have risen, and that you have talked with me." After these women had recovered from the shock of their amazement, they hastened back to the city and to the home of Elijah Mark, where they related to the 10 apostles all that had happened to them. But the apostles were not inclined to believe them. The apostles didn't believe him. They just, like when he was teaching them all through this ministry that he was going to do this, they just didn't understand. They never could quite understand him. They still wanted him to be the Messiah sitting on the throne of David. They just couldn't get over that. Anyway, the apostles thought at first that the women had seen a vision. But when Mary Magdalene repeated the words which Jesus had spoken to them, and when Peter heard his name, he rushed out of the upper chamber, followed closely by John, and in great haste to reach the tomb and see these things for himself. The Bible only says that John ran to the tomb, but in the Urantia, Peter went as well. Excuse me, I hiccups. So the women repeated the story of talking with Jesus to the other apostles. But they would not believe, and they would not go to find out for themselves, as had Peter and John. Now we get to Peter and John at the tomb, but I've spent an hour. My God, I've gone through an hour. So this whole ascension and meeting in his mortal life is going to be the subject definitely throughout the week, this week. And yesterday's, I've done 2 Sunday shows that were 2 hours long. I think I've done 3, but last Sunday before last, we did the crucifixion, and that was a 2-hour Sunday show. And then yesterday was a 2-hour and 15-minute show on the resurrection, and what took place. So I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it yet, go back and watch it. Just go to Answers Heaven Speaks, tap on posts or videos, and you'll find it. I don't remember what shirt. I was wearing a long sleeve. This is a short sleeve. I was wearing a long sleeve, sort of like a T-shirt shirt. It was blue as well. I like blue. But we're going to have to get into Peter and John at the tomb starting tomorrow. And then Jesus makes appearances to a lot of people. He meets with the Greeks. He meets with Mary Magdalene again. He meets with his family, his brothers and sisters. All that's coming up. That'll all be coming up tomorrow. And I'm sorry, I kind of babbled for a long time today. It looks like Marisa's going to be able to come in, so let me check and see if she's going to grace our presence today. Let's see. Marisa Morris approved. Send in. See if Marisa gets. My glasses reflect the light on my computer, so I don't like to keep them on. Otherwise, kind of a mess. And then if Marisa comes in, I'm gonna have to move the screen up a little bit, or I gotta crunch way down real low. So it looks like Marisa's trying to get in. Let's see if she does. I don't know if you see it. I see a little black thing pulsating up right at the top of my head. now, right above my head. There she comes. She's coming now. I have to squint
Hi.
way down there. Hi, Marissa. How are you?
Hey, good.
Let me pull this thing up a little bit.
Oh, oops,
Anyway.
I've got it's coming from all directions. Hold on, let me
Oh,
move this.
you got other
Yeah,
places
I was
on.
watching you on the actual computer.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna see if I could get logged in somehow on the computer, but I guess you can only do it using your phone. So anyway, I just spent the last
Yeah, I
hour
think
listening.
that was the problem when I tried to get my brother Steve on once. I think he kept trying to come on the computer, and he got really
Oh,
frustrated.
yeah. The computer does not work, so it's only the.
And
That's only the phone.
because I am vertical, I think you have to come on that same way. You have to come on vertical. You have to have your phone. If you were to turn your phone right now, I don't know what would happen to you. Could you try that? Turn your phone horizontal, see
I'm
what
sideways
happens.
now.
Okay, yeah, now you're sideways. Yeah, you have to do it vertical because I'm vertical.
Oh, that's
So,
kind of cool. Doing
yeah,
that.
twist it back. Yeah, if I was to twist mine, we both would be sideways.
Look who's over there licking his arm like he's not supposed to. Busted. Nope.
Oh,
Don't lick your
that that's
arm.
your dog. That's your dog,
Don't lick
Lucky.
your arm, mister. And he keeps licking his arm and he's not supposed to. And I just don't have the heart to put that cone on his head. So I always take it off and I give him the benefit of the doubt. And then now I turn my back and I look and it's like he's licking. No. He was supposed to have an appointment today at 5, but I'm canceled his appointment so I could do this because I was going to do it from there. And then everything that was being said and read was so interesting that I was like, I don't want to fall out of channeling mode because I've taken him over to the vet and then, not be able to comment on anything. And now I don't even remember anything that I was going to comment on.
That's all right.
It was, I don't remember what you were talking about. It was at the beginning. Hold on. My camera's kind of fuzzy. Hold on. Let me see. Is that a little bit better?
You got to probably clean your lens.
Hold on 1 second. Let me just clean this off real quick.
Yeah.
It's still kind of fuzzy. Where the room's all messed up. We just got new carpet and we're going to put a new carpet in here. And
Yeah, I think you got light behind you, I think. Do you have an open window? Yeah, that's better.
Much better. Okay,
yeah. And then bring it up a little bit so it's not cutting your head off.
Look at him. He shakes so hard that he falls over.
Well, you know what it is? We've all had casts before, and how much your arm or your leg itches when you have a cast. You can imagine. I mean, he probably wants to just rip it off so he can scratch and bite, his arm.
Yeah, he does. And that's what he's doing. So he's got a little rash there. Come here, dude. So I made a fort after, I know how I always loved having forts. So there's a mirror behind me, but I'm literally like inside of my closet right now. So I made a little fort inside my closet. So I'm going to sit in here. Here, come on, Lucky. Come sit with me. Come on. But anyways, so no, you were talking about all of the different lives that we have to go through, all the 560 lives we have to go through. And then you were talking about the Morantian worlds and keeping our personality. And that's when I was like, oh, his cast can stay until tomorrow morning because they just need to rewrap it. And the kids are at tennis right now, so I couldn't. So I was like, okay, I'll take him. But I'll take him tomorrow morning because I wanted to stay and I wanted to channel about that. But now I don't remember exactly what I was going to channel. Remind me what you were talking about, the reincarnation and.
Well, what happened was. Just like you and I, when we die, when anybody that's out there watching, when you die, you go to what's called the resurrection halls on the first planet, the first mansion world, and you go in for judgment, 3 days of judgment. And that's when I believe the Akashic records come into play. And we are judged. We are judged at that time. That is the point in time where your soul will either decide to completely eliminate you, so you no longer exist at all.
You'll disintegrate. You won't even exist anymore.
No personality, no consciousness, no being, no nothing. You're done. Over. Psst. Or you are like reincarnation. The soul wants to go back. The soul has to come back to Earth and learn other lessons. But in that consciousness, you're not allowed to remember anything. We come down here again as with what we call amnesia. We don't remember anything. But when we do go up to the mansion worlds, we get to remember all of our lives and all the experiences that we've had. So Jesus went up to the Morancha world. He went up to the first Morancha world, and and on those worlds, they use the elements of that body of planet or whatever it may be to create the body, And so he ended up with a Morancha body.
And that's Earth. The Morancha is Earth.
No, you and me, we're dust to dust. We're dust to dust. We are created by all the elements of the earth.
Okay.
When we leave this earth, we go to another planet. That planet has more elements than the earth, and those elements are used to make our Morancha bodies, our resurrected bodies. So we will have bodies. We will have bodies in the next place we go. But the elements used to make those bodies they have twice as many elements up there. So we don't know exactly what the makeup of our bodies are going to be.
Yeah, so
because
they're saying the fifth element that we're created with is love and space and like a void. That's the fifth element of creation, and that the Moranchian body is created out of like the sixth element. So like the sixth element would be etheric matter. Is it etheric matter? Carbon? They said something about carbon dating. What do they use to carbon date things? Obviously carbon, if they use the word carbon in that, but I wonder what they're carbon dating, something about carbon dating.
We don't know what those elements are.
They're saying carbon dating the soul's etheric matter is something that the Moranchian body is what are they saying? Is what the Moranchian body is susceptible to. For the soul has just as something is made in this world, and you can use carbon dating to determine, based on your principles of this earth, this world, how many years ago this was made. This same thing can be used for the body in which you are, in which you have, in which you will reside in once the flesh body has disintegrated from this reality. But understand and know that the flesh is the soul is the flesh. The water is the soul is the water. And when one leaves this reality, enters into the fifth element of space, love, void, and emptiness. This is when you enter into a space where there is no water, but there's more like a gelatin-like body. Many times this is viewed by those who can see as a more jelly-like or rubber-like body. In this channel's mind, many times she has seen them as Gumbies during your sessions. Why is there a Gumby here? Why is there a Gumby? This was someone in their Moranchian body. This is not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It just is. This is the jelly-like substance body that one puts their consciousness into and is able to communicate with the lower dimensional realms using this. So when Jesus died or left this earth, the consciousness in which he was, the personality he was, the ego that he was, all of that which he was entered into this rubber-like body. And understanding and knowing that plastic or rubber is the only thing that can stop energy from conducting is something that's quite interesting indeed, because you can stop energy from conducting by being in this body. So you don't need to be alive. You don't need breath. You don't need air. You don't need water. You don't need energy, because you are almost frozen in this rubber-like body. For when you're down in the lower dimensions, you need to breathe. You need air. You need a beating heart. You need blood. Just as you said earlier, there is no blood in Jesus when he was in the Moranchian body, because no blood is needed. No water is needed. Nothing is needed. Consciousness does not need electricity. Consciousness does not need air. Consciousness does not need anything. Consciousness is. Consciousness always will be, and consciousness cannot die. It will continue to exist forever and ever and ever and ever. Even if one decides to disintegrate a life or a personality or a form or an ego or a lifetime, their consciousness will still reside. So look at your consciousness as ever withstanding. It is the alpha, it's the omega, it's the beginning, it's the end, it's the everything, it's everywhere, and it's nowhere all at the same time. But when you enter into a Moranchen state, you can be in this rubber-like body where there's no bones. Bones carry forth the trauma that we have within ourselves. Bones, the teeth, the hair, the structure of the body, not the flesh, but the actual bones and the structure within oneself. This is the dust to dust that you enter into. This is not the rock, so to speak, within the body, but this is the rock like substance of the body. So when Jesus says that I'm the rock, Jesus was the bones or the structure or the skeleton of the human like structure. The angelics would be more like the neurological system, the nerves, the electricity shooting through you, and then the flesh would be that which is the God self. That's God. God is the skin around you. God, your God particle is your skin. Your skin makes you human. Your skin makes you divine. Your skin makes you who you are, what you are, where you are at any given time. People can tell where you've been and what you've done by your skin, by whether it's weathered by the sun, whether it's been taken care of and kept out of the sun, whether your hands are worked and weathered, whether you are a hard worker, whether you're not a hard worker. This is your skin tells a lot, and this is your signature for this lifetime. I understand and know that it is your God self. And this is why alien beings that do not have skin cannot live on this planet, because the sun scorches them. Anything that lives on this planet that does not have the God particle, does not have skin, cannot exist above water in this world, because the sun would scorch all of you. All of you would be scorched. You don't understand how hot the sun truly is and how much it actually destroys any beings living on a planet this close to the sun. But your skin is magical, so treat your skin well. Treat your skin well. Don't put things on it that will hurt it. Appreciate the fact that God gave you skin. This is very, 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 very important. So Jesus was the bones, brought forth the bones within us, the skeleton, the structure of how we should live, and then died. Bones went away, entered into the Moranchen body, and then this is where the etheric like substance doesn't emit from, but this is where the soul takes form, and then will then go back into a flesh body. So this is the space, this rubber like body is where the consciousness goes to retain itself, to rejuvenate itself, to remember what it is, who it is, where it is, why it is, and then go back down into the water again. And the water again is like the soul. The water is the Father. And when we enter into this water, this is when the say the rubber like substance begins to become porous. The water enters in, and you begin to expand and grow. Your consciousness becomes alive, and you become water-like in substance. So many beings at this time are not treating themselves right, or not treating their flesh right, because they say, "Oh, I'm spirit. I'm spirit. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm spirit. I'm not flesh. I'm not a body." But all of your cellular memory within your skin remembers your entire story. It's like your movie screen. It's like your movie screen. So understand and know that the Akashic records are carried within that skin. What? Oh, I just popped back into. I heard Peter go, "Turn around. The light's on the wrong space." So I said, "Okay, I'm turning around." And then I just heard myself talking about skin. They're saying that this Jesus, he was scarred in his hands, right? They put the things through his hands.
Yeah, they put the nails between in his hands and his feet, and then in his last moments on the cross, they have to make sure they were going to break his legs, but they realized he was dead, and just to make sure he was dead, they poked a spear in him to see if he was going to bleed, and he did not, because the heart was not pumping. Mm-hmm. So he had holes in his hands, his feet, and in his right side. Might have been his left side. Don't know.
Okay. So what they're saying is that I didn't hear I was going on to the internet like constantly to try and, because I was ready to do the show with you yesterday, and it just wasn't showing as you being live. I was even texting you, and you said you texted me right when I was live, and I kept going on there, couldn't find it. I went on all of our pages, I went on there, couldn't find it. So I guess I wasn't meant to hear it live. I probably would have wanted to cut in, and that would have taken from it. But I'm going to watch it tonight, and then tomorrow I'll be able to channel about it, because I want to actually listen to it, because I was really excited to be a part of that show and listen to the resurrection. I even told people when I went to I didn't go to church, but I told a couple of people from my church I talked to that they needed to go on and listen to it. So they may have actually listened to you, and then I wasn't there. But anyways, Jesus, thing is being weird. So what Jesus is saying is, Jesus this, not Jesus here, so this Moranchian body or whatever, it's like, remember I used to always say, oh my God, there's like Gumby here. Remember I used to say there's like a Gumby
Uh-huh.
like,
Yeah.
here, yeah. They're saying that's just a being coming through inside this body, but they're saying that Lucifer is one of these. So Lucifer is like one of these rubber like beings. And
Huh.
it's like it's not really rubber, but it's like what it's showing is like it when one of these beings comes into your energy field, it stops all the energy from conducting and like kills you. It's like you start to die slowly but surely, because it's like stops all your energy from flowing, because it's like putting like rubber over like an electrical circuit, you know, it blocks it and you can't get any energy. But it can also hold in electricity, you know, if you wrap it around the wires, it can hold the electricity in and keep you from getting shocked. So they're saying
That's
these
right.
bodies work together, but when a being turns their back on God, they lose the
Uh-huh.
right to skin. They lose the right to have skin. So it's like they have to stay in these Moranchian bodies where they can't feel, they can't like taste, they can't touch, they can't any of the stuff that people are like, all, ooh, I want to go be human so I can feel and taste and touch and smell and just feel the water and you feel all this stuff. They don't get the pleasure of any of that, but they're still consciousness stuck through eternity being themselves. So what they do is they go and they try and enter into other people's experiences and existences by having you like worship them or call them in, and they're like fake spirit guides or fake gods or whatever. And as you call them into you, you'll get sick and you'll start to get things like cancer and autoimmune, and you'll start to get like they'll start to take over your body almost, and you'll become somebody that you didn't even realize you were, because it's not you, it's them. They've taken over your skin. They just want to come into your body so they can feel. It reminds me of when Grandpa Joe, remember you when you asked Grandpa Joe to come into your body and help you with the golf game, and you golfed the worst game you ever had in your life.
Yeah.
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 So, but
Yeah.
so he, because he wasn't in his Moranchian body, he has the right to have flesh. So he still could enter into your field, and it was almost like two consciousnesses inside of your field. He could feel everything and was like, whoa, you know, so it like threw you all off. But if somebody comes into your field that's like just this like Moranchian type body, like it's kind of like the Antichrist body. Jesus went into his Antichrist body. It wasn't like a fear body. It was more like it was like the opposite of like it's it's hard to explain. They're saying it's like almost like your shadow self where you have no light. There's no light can enter into rubber. It's just like, you know, like blocked. So they're saying so what they're saying is they say their message for today is to ask each person that's watching this today to ask yourself, is any of my conscious awareness trapped inside of this rubber like body of mine, or is there any being that is from this level of consciousness living inside of my field? And if so, ask that the Father, that the Holy Spirit, and that the Christ within eject and reject all Moranchian bodies that are not your own, that are not your own. And again, if you're existing in this experience, in this world, in this reality, you should not be in that body. You should not be in that body. That's for when you die. You go into that body and then you come back, or you sit there for a little while and then you come back, but you always come back. But you shouldn't have that body, that sixth layer, that sixth element within your experience right now, because it's only going to cause you to block light. It's only going to allow something else to experience life through you, make your decisions for you, and it's going to make your life less of an expansive experience. It's going to be a very depressing experience. So if you have depression, ask yourself if you have any of these any beings that are of this layer of consciousness within your field, and then ask to eject and reject them from your experience forever. And if you need help with this, or if you need assistance with this, you can reach out, and maybe I can either, maybe I'll lead a class or a group to help people release that if they feel like they can't really do it themselves. If you really feel like you can't do it yourself, just reach out through Facebook Messenger or whatever to me, and I'll see if I can maybe do a recording and or a class or something like that, because it feels like a lot of people are being affected by this. It feels like the suicides, feels like the depression in the kids especially, because they're accepting all these weird deities and beings into their energy field because they're so desperate to feel love and be accepted, that they're calling out to things that aren't God. They're not the Father, they're not water, they're not divine love, they don't know what it feels like to be loved by a mother and father, because their parents don't know how to love. So they're reaching out to beings that love them in the same way. And that's by blocking their existence and blocking their happiness. So if you're young or if you're old, doesn't matter which age you are, just if you need help with that, reach out, but ask yourself that. And the first answer that comes to your mind, the very first answer that comes to your mind right here on the right side of your head, will go boop, yes or no. That's the right answer. The second answer is always the wrong one. The second one's always the, well, it's not really right. No, I don't know. Blah, blah, blah. So the very first thing that comes to your head is one of these expecting my energy field, yes or no? If you hear like a yes, just, okay, take that at face value. It's a yes. And understand and know that nothing is permanent. Everything that is in your field is under your control. All you must do is command this and know that God, that Christ, that the Holy Spirit love you, that you're divinely inspired, unconditionally loved, and you are the grace that God placed upon this earth. You are special, you are divine, and you are loved. We bid you adieu. That was Andrew talking almost the whole time. But I know that Jesus used to come in as Andrew, right?
Andrew was the head of the apostolic corps. He was Peter's brother.
He is my old guide that we used to channel at the very beginning, remember?
Yeah, I think we did have an Andrew. That's
I
right.
channeled at the very
I
beginning. I
don't
channeled
know.
all the time with Andrew.
I don't know if that's the same Andrew that was.
It's the same one that we used to channel, but it was funny because he was almost like rubber-like he was kind of like, and he was saying that he said that he's Jesus's moronchic body.
Huh.
So maybe that's all I could really connect with at that time, when we first started channeling at the very beginning. And that's why Jesus came through in that level.
They're just saying that the body was not recognizable as Jesus because it was his new Morancha body, but they don't go into the explanation like you just did. They don't say it was a rubber body. Mm-hmm. They do say that it doesn't need food, and it doesn't need food, and it doesn't have any blood. There's no blood, and so if there's no blood, there must not be a heart. So
no heart.
So
it's just pure consciousness.
all pure consciousness, but your personality that's what's eternal.
The rubber is the personality. Actually, I just heard. So people that want to stay in their personality and never change out of their personality, they'll keep going back to that, and then they'll come back here. Like they said that people that do like Disney wanted to cryogenically freeze himself or whatever like that. That people say that he froze himself. They're putting their consciousness goes into kind of like that moronchic, whatever that word is, level, and it's like they're stuck in it's people want to be in that because they want to be themselves forever. They don't want to evolve and grow. I mean, they want to have they would want to be Joe forever. They wouldn't want to be like the ironsmith or whatever it was that you were.
Blacksmith.
Yeah, the blacksmith or the Caesar's time or the Jesus time. They want to be that. They want to be like Joe their entire life. So they would go back in there and they would just focus on being you forever, and then they would kind of be frozen and stuck. It's kind of like a purgatory almost. Did they say that Jesus left that level, or he just went into that before he came back, right?
His consciousness and personality left his body and went up to the first mansion world in Mansonia, which is in the Morontian environment. The Morontian environment is within our system of 1,000 inhabited planets, and he went to the resurrection halls on Mansonia, which is in the first mansion world, and they basically had a parade for him. I mean, they went, wow, here's our creator. He's actually down here in our little Morancha world right now, and here's our creator. He's going to see what we see.
This thing says, I am Mansonia. I am Mansonia, and it's a male and a female combined.
Yeah, there's no male, there's no male, and no female, there's no gender, there's no male and there's no female.
This is where the people are that think they're transgender. They're stuck in their this layer of consciousness because there's no gender, so they get it's all the gender confusion. So it says, I am Mansonia, and Peter goes, or Mansonio.
Okay.
But it says, I am the presence that lies within each and every single one of you. I am the presence that brings confusion, but I'm the presence that brings a wherewithal to want to exist and to be a human being. For it is very hard to want to be a human being because human beings are so complex and are so scared. And to want to go into a scared being is very intimidating, frightening, so to speak. And we must forget how scary it's going to be. Otherwise, we won't go in. So we enter into this state where we, in essence, don't really have feelings or emotions, and we just have consciousness. And this is where we enter into before entering into the fetus or into before being conceived as an actual human being on that level. So it's a way of keeping us almost sane in that world, but it's not a good state of being to be in while you're alive, because then you might as well be dead.
Hmm. Hmm.
This Mansonia thing is like this weird like energy, and it's like everyone's like kind of like partying and stuff like that there, but it's like nobody's having any fun. They're just like woo woo, but they're like, it's just like they're just like bored. But it's a very weird world. And then they say above this level is even boringer, and above this level is even boringer, and above this level is so much fun. And you see Peter going whoa. Peter's like up there at the next level. I think he says Peter's at like the 4th level, and everybody's dancing. And they're like woo, so everyone's just dancing and partying and having. But that's probably why he's always dancing. I see all these dancing grandmas running around and stuff. They said this is the level of heaven that you want to have fun in, because everyone's just having so much fun. But then as you go down lower and lower and lower and lower, you start forgetting how fun it is, and you start getting all like stoic and because you can't like remember how amazing it is being in spirit, because then you'll never want to stay in your human existence. So Peter says it's not even really worth feeling or doing anything until you get to the this 4th level or mansion world where he is, and everyone's just dancing. And above that, I see Jesus just kind of sitting there, and it's Christ's reality and Christ's world, and everybody's just like, it feels so good here, and they're all just like basking in like the sun, floating in water, and just feeling good. And then right above that, I see everybody kind of looking around the pond, and everybody's thinking up an existence. And then I see a little them floating on the little inner tube, where they're floating in the water. And then beneath them in the water, I see everyone dancing. And then beneath them, I see all the other born worlds. And then I see us going to babies. So it's like we exist on all these different realities, but I think that heaven is real. I'm always like, I wish I could know if heaven was real or not. We've written all these books on heaven, and I've seen it, and I've followed people who have died to it, and they've shown me glimpses of it, and it looks amazing. But I just still am so skeptical, and I'm like, I don't even know if it's real. But I can see it now, and it's like really, really real. But not if you kill yourself, and not if you leave before your time. And if you leave before your time, it's like you have to just keep doing it over and over until you make it all the way.
Well, it sounds like, I started out today because Jesus and Gabriel together created the 3rd dispensation and raised all the sleeping survivors, people who had not been able to transfer to the Morancha worlds. They just stayed in their graves for 1,000, 2,000 years, and then they were raised up. And our religions talk about a dispensational period, except that supposedly once we were given the Spirit of Truth, the Spirit of the Father. I always point up here because I always think of him as being right there in my brain. Mm-hmm. Then our resurrection is immediate. It's immediate. It's we just pass over it. And then how many books? There are a lot of books out there of life after life. People who experience going to heaven, then they have to come back. You experienced it, looking at yourself in a wrecked car. But that's kind of a transitional period. That's a resurrection hall. That's your judgment period. And obviously, it was either your truth adjuster, your
my thought adjuster.
Thought adjuster. It was either your thought adjuster, or it was your soul, or it was
my thought
Spirit.
Adjuster.
So you met your thought adjuster, but you weren't actually on the mansion world. You were in that in-between area, and I won't call it purgatory. That's probably something similar, but a little bit different.
I was in my Morancha body. That's
you might, you might have. I don't know. I'm not sure if I fully understand it. And the Rancha book doesn't fully explain it, although I think I can go back, because we're on paper 190 right now, but paper 47 explains the Morancha world a little bit more, and that's what I was doing last week. But there's even more chapters, so I don't know. I'll have to do I'll have to do a little studying before tomorrow, and maybe I'll find out the answer on more about what the Morancha body is. All I know is the Morancha body is created by using the elements of the world that you're going to be on in your progression. You're going to go from one world to another world, and each world is a little bit different. And at each world, you're going to have another body. In each of those 570 lives you have to live. So I don't know. Peter said he's on life number 233. So he's probably already gone through all the boring lower levels
Oh,
where
he
we
says
have
you
to
have
go to
to go
school.
through the boring levels every time you come down. So
Really?
you're up there having fun, and then you have to prepare yourself to be in a human, because you can't go from a state of bliss to being born. You have to kind of step it down, down, down. Otherwise, you're going to go into shock, and you're going to be like, I was just blissfully, joyfully in heavenly realms, and now I'm in this baby pooping on myself. So it's like
Oh.
you have to go through these different, your consciousness has to go through these different phases as you enter into the human. And it isn't until you're completely like about age 7 to where you've passed through all those, because you have to kind of be numb when you're a baby, and then when you're 7 you kind of get back up to that bliss realm, and then that's when the world starts to destroy you, because you feel that amazing feeling inside, like when you're 7, 8 years old, but then the world is so different than what you feel like you should be, and that's when you start getting conflicted and your ego starts developing and stuff like that. But what they were just saying, they were just, when you said something about the Morancha body, I just said, well, where's my Morancha body? And I heard, it's right here in your arm, it's a rose. And I went, what? So whatever, I have no idea what that means, but you were saying something that's created by the elements of the world that you live in. But I just heard
Yeah.
it's a rose and it's right here on your arm. And I was like, okay, whatever. I don't understand what that means. And I'm not even willing to dive into that one right now.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's so interesting. It's just so interesting, because it's like, for me, it's like when stuff is more complex, it's easier for me to believe than just like, oh, we go to heaven and we float on clouds with harps.
No.
Even learning
No.
about the harps and
Far.
clouds was interesting to me, because water and clouds, that it's like, it's water doesn't ever get destroyed, it just changes form, just like we change form, our spirit changes
Right.
form. But like harps and the trumpets and all that stuff, it's all sound and frequency, and we can be healed by music, and the angels are the music and all that stuff. So
Yeah,
I love learning about all this.
they've even got double the notes, the musical notes.
Is that what they said?
Yeah, we not only have the double elements, but we've got double everything, double colors, double musical notes. I mean, it's just mind-boggling
Oh my gosh! If anybody's
what we're
listening,
going to
go to my
experience.
go to Spotify. It's on Spotify, and I think it's on Apple Music. I have a podcast, and if you just type in Marisa Morris, all my shows should pop up. But the last show that I posted, it's like a 20-minute thing, and it's just a song that I channeled to on a song called Breathe, and it's me talking about how the angelics are coming in at this time to bring in the A plus notes, the B plus notes, the C plus notes. They're double notes, because
Yeah,
they're notes that we can't hear, but
yeah,
angels can hear, just like dogs can hear notes that we can't
yeah,
hear. So they're
right.
saying that our soul group is here to bring in these A plus, B plus, C plus, D plus notes, through channeling, just words, through speaking, through singing, through music, and just through our thought forms, because we're bringing through those double notes. But that's
Hmm.
interesting that you just said that, because yeah, that was in the last podcast that I posted. So yeah, you guys go check that out. I think you can just type in Marissa Morris and it'll come up. So it should. If not, go to patreon.com / discovering intuition. I have all my podcasts posted there too. So anyways, well,
I'll
the
do a
Kinder's
little.
actually are going to come barreling in the door soon.
Okay, I'll let you go. I'm just going to say I'll do a little studying tomorrow. I'm pretty well studied already for tomorrow because I just didn't get very far
Blows
today.
me
Didn't get.
away as you go through all this stuff that you can retain all this information. You say that I'm the kindergarten, or I'm the college teacher, and you're like the preschool teacher. I'm sitting here going, how does he remember all this stuff? But I just keep going back to when I was in Caring Ministries, and you used to tell me all the stories about the Urantia book, and I'd just be like, oh, I just wanted to hear more and more and more. And I'd turn around and probably tell all the stories wrong to everybody that was in my rehab, but they were all, oh, we want to know more. I'm sure all of them went and got the Urantia book and read it. So, but it's such a good book. It's just so good. So today I hashtagged Urantia. So if people are looking for Urantia book stuff, they might find our post and watch it. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, I'll see if I can find out a little bit more about the Urantia body and the Morancha body and the
And
Morancha existence before I get in tomorrow.
if
And
anybody has questions, like I was thinking about that today during the thing, I saw a couple people asking questions. If you have actual questions that you want us to kind of like address or something. I was thinking maybe like once a week or something, we could go through like questions that people actually have, because I know a lot of people like on Wednesday night group will be like, oh, I have a question about this. And then I'll forget to tell you by the time, I see you or something. So I was thinking maybe we could do like a, answer a couple people's questions if they have questions. So if you guys have questions, send them to us in the Answer 7 Speaks Messenger. And, and we'll try to get answers to them over during the live broadcast or something like that. So
Cool.
there was a few good questions and then I totally forgot them.
Huh. Yeah.
They're always good. And then I forget them.
Usually the questions are directed towards you. So maybe that's something
these
you
questions were
can
directed
check
towards
out.
you about the Urantia book, about actual stuff that you were reading about. And I was like, I'm not sure. So, but I'll check them and then I'll let you know if there's any questions.
Well, forward them to me because I'm not seeing those. Most of the time people are just saying thank you. We're enjoying this. And or they say they like my place because I've been showing, like yesterday I walked around and showed my house a little bit.
I saw that. I showed the
And
kids.
I get a heck of a lot more views through plays when I show this, when it isn't just my mug on the screen, when I show
something about not
of
having the talking heads. When we're just the talking heads, not as many people watch, but when it's actually something, people watch it.
Yeah, it keeps their interest or gets them involved. When I do come on as the talking head, so to speak. But anyway, this stuff is just very, very interesting. And I'm really happy that people are following this story. But my intent is to go back, and I'm actually curious now when I go back and start again, we go back to his birth and talk about the existence and what the world was like when he came in, and then going through those first few years in his life, now having this knowledge. I mean, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
It's going to be different because I'm going to be able to all of a sudden be referring to the future when such and such things are going to be happening and relate it to his earlier life. But anyway, it's all going to be interesting, and we'll play it all by ear here. I think what we have to do, I probably should discuss this off camera, but because there are a lot of differences, not a lot, but there are various differences between our books and the story it was done in here in the Urantia book. I think when I come back to San Diego, I think we need to reread our books. Reread probably the 8 greatest authors.
Yeah.
And tape those and then have transcripts done. I think I need to have a new addition to that book. And so I think that's something we should probably look forward to doing besides our live shows. I think that's something that we could plan on doing. And just if we're at the condo, I can, we can be laying on the couch and I'll just be reading the books.
Perfect.
And they can correct things because I'll probably come up and go, well, the Urantia book says this, and we say this, so which one is right?
Yeah.
The only problem is whenever I ask them
They'll
those kind of questions.
Well, everything's right. They're all right because there's all these realities.
Yeah, nothing's right. Yeah, nothing's right. Nothing's wrong. And then they go in and give us a whole different lesson, and we go, oh gosh, okay, all right.
Well, now they're going to start in on it again. They're going to start saying, because we're living in a quantum reality, in a quantum world, and depending on where your mind is, that's what the story is. So we'll see what happens. It's like, geez, I'm always like, what a cop out, but at the same time, they always come through with such a good lesson too. So it's like,
they do. Yeah, yeah, they really do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, go take care of the kids. And the only thing I suggest, I know how busy you are, especially at your 4 o'clock hour or at the 3 o'clock hour, you're getting ready to go get kids or whatever. But if you could just sit down, if you're going to listen to me, take a pencil and paper or whatever, a pen and paper, and when you hear something, write it down so that it'll be on a piece of paper when we get together. And then you'll have the question, and you'll probably answer
that. I just couldn't find a pen.
Oh, okay. Well, try to find a pen. Try to find a pen. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, go hug the kiddos for me, and
we're gonna put new carpet in. We just got new carpet for this room. So when you come here, you'll have nice plush. It's like whitish, tannish, creamish colored carpet. So we're putting it inside. It's a big area rug. It's gonna fill the whole room. So it's gonna be real nice.
Great. Yeah. Okay, well, have a good night, and I'll and hopefully I'll see you again tomorrow.
I'll be here tomorrow. Okay, I love you, and
Love you too.
bye everybody. Tell Drew and Tony I said hi, and
I will.
love them too.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, Marissa. Bye. Okay, folks. Let's see. I don't know how many live people we had on here today, but I always like to kind of say hi because, boy, to take time. Sita, that's a new one. Sita Anderson. Thank you for coming in. E''Ender. I don't even know how to say that. Endero Boteo. Thank you for coming in. Hi, Anna Maria. Natasha came in. Sheila came in. Heather. Carmen. My gosh. Hi, Luz. Luz came in. Of course, Marissa's there as well. See if anything else came up above that. So, anyway, we got some people in here. That was really good. Thank you for being here during the live, and thank you to all of you who have gone this far now, watching the entire show for today. And if you haven't had a chance to see the resurrection show from yesterday, my Sunday special, I highly recommend you go back and listen to it. Don't be distracted by watching me. Just set the phone down and put your earplugs in, and probably just go to sleep. Lay down in bed and listen to it. You'll fall asleep pretty quickly. But there's a lot of stuff that was in that show yesterday, talking about Jesus and what was happening in that tomb. But we're going to keep the story going. We're going to be finding out what happens when he's already presented himself to Mary Magdalene and the other 4 women that were with her. So there are 5 women that got to. In the Bible, it only talks about Mary Magdalene seeing him, and but in all reality, there was actually 5 of them that met the Morancha Jesus, the Jesus with a new body. But his voice is the same and his personality is the same. Just like your voice will be the same and your personality will be the same. If you hate your voice, sorry, you're stuck with it. If you hate your personality, well, maybe you can work on that at the next level, if not right here. So anyway, thanks again, everybody, for coming in. Joe Morris with Answers Heaven Speaks. And if God's willing, he'll bring me back again tomorrow. And we'll just keep the story going. So have a good night. And I'll catch you next time, tomorrow.